This is a podcast where I interview the creative director of Partisan Advertising, and we go into the creative process behind creating logos, creating collateral, and also how to actually run a business as a creative. Design.
Yeah.
All I can draw is stick figures, so I don't actually get how that works. And so when did your first passion of design start?
Well, I started drawing when I was quite a youngster, and then developed through school and in what we call high school in South Africa. I used to draw girls to get closer to them, portraits and stuff like that.
So you'd sit there and draw me like one of your French girls, like, from Titanic,
Yeah,
like that.
pretty much, except I'd have clothes on.
How would you pitch it to them? Would you like, hey guys, you want me to draw you? Or
Yeah, pretty
how?
much. That's how I would do it. I had a friend who allowed me to do the first one, and then the second one kind of saw what I did with the first one, and it kind of rolled on. I didn't do many, maybe 5 or 6 if my brain serves me right.
Did it lead to a date? What was
No,
the? Oh, damn. So you wouldn't recommend it as a strategy for young
no, it
men?
wouldn't. And then when I graduated from school, basically I had 2 options. One was to go to the army because we had conscription, and the other one was to go to graphic design school. So I thought, well, I can draw at school. I might as well try graphic design.
Interesting. So you can get out and go in the army if you do some study.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So you got a whole lot of nerds, and then you got a whole lot of people that don't know much.
No, that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the graphic design in those days was basically everything off, no computers. We didn't have computers back in 1992. So you had to draw everything, you had to craft everything differently to how you do now. Now if you make an error or mistake, you just kind of change it, Control Z, and it's fixed. But back in those days, if you made a balls up on something, you had to really start over again.
What were you using, like pencil coloring or
Yeah,
paint? Or
pencil, magic markers, paint, gouache, acrylics, photocopy machines.
how is it being used then? Like how would you monetize design back then? So you just print on magazines and stuff, or?
Yeah, it was pretty much magazines, television, stuff like that. But graphic design kind of works in a way of, bless you,
Thank you.
works in
It's
a way.
ruined.
Yeah, graphic design was pretty much the same as it is now in terms of billing and so forth. It's just that the clients, I think, were a bit more cautious about how they wanted to make changes, because they knew, okay, if I want to just shift the headline a bit to the left, it's going to cost me a whole hour or 2 hours of the designer's time. Whereas now it's just like move it to the left, and the guy moves it to the left, and you make another printout and you get done. So the billing aspect of it, I think, has stayed the same, but just how clients see their ability to make changes, that's the difference.
Yeah, so you get less money, more work. That's good.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, inspiring.
Yeah.
So when you're gonna create a design for a business, what's probably the most things people want? Is it logo? Is it printouts for like direct mail? Is it thumbnails? Is it what?
It starts with logo designs most of the time. I just finished a what would you call it? It's not a rebrand, but an update to an existing logo for a client. And that's generally where it starts. And from there, you've got to roll out all the other necessary items like letterheads, business cards, card designs, building designs. How does the logo apply itself to all of these different things? And that's kind of a re-logo, if you want to call it that. It's not a rebrand, because the rebrand is different. Rebrand is like establishing a whole new value system for a company, and that's something else. It's not really design work. It's pretty much marketing work.
Yeah, I sort of see brand as like associations. It started from when they used to brand cows, and the hope is if you brand them, they won't steal your cow.
Yeah.
But what goes into a logo? Because I mean, I'm a bit logical. I'm like, okay, well, if more people see my face and associate it with good things, then, I might make some money. But then when you remove yourself, then you have the things like Nike and those sort of things. What do you think a logo is useful to, and what goes actually behind a logo?
Logo is definitely useful. It creates a brand awareness that is quite important, very important. Just like you said, your face is your logo, and you don't want to mess things up with it. You want to be consistent with it.
Yeah.
One of the things that's happened recently is the Jaguar rebrand. I don't know if
You're going to bring that one up. Yeah, good.
well, I thought,
Yeah, I saw the video. Yeah.
yeah, the video and the logo design are quite out there. It doesn't really matter what I think about it because they're not going to change. They're not going to say, geez, 100,000 people thought we were crazy. Elon Musk wanted to know if we even sold cars in his Twitter feed or his X feed. And they're not going to change it. I think they were quite brave with the logo design, not so brave with the video. But that's the kind of scenario they're looking at, is that they want to future-proof themselves and they want to make a difference, I guess. No other brand looks like that, and no other brand would have taken the chance to do it, I don't think. You wouldn't see BMW changing so dramatically. And I guess it's because Jaguar has a bit of a niche following. They're not really like the cars for everyone. They're cars for selected people. And
Yeah, I don't think any of those people were in the video.
No, they weren't. Yeah, that's the problem, right? So it starts with everybody's basically creative in some way, sense or form. A florist is creative. A accountant can be creative with the amount of cheating he does on your tax return. As an example, you're creative with your blog. I'm creative with pens and paper and computers. And, I think when it comes to design, there's a shift between what people are creative at and what people are trained to be creative with. It's easy to draw a stick figure, as you said earlier. And then you get to a point where someone is actually drawing a storyboard or drawing a logo or drawing something. They've been professionally trained to do that. And they've spent their lives as professionals doing that. And then people come along and say, well, I have creative ability. I want to make changes. I want to make difference to my logo. And in some ways that's allowable, but and understandable more so. But it's difficult work. It is. And creative work, I don't really recommend it for many people who don't have hard shell, because you work and you put your effort into it and you think it's great. Someone comes along and says, no, it's not so good. Because as they say, right after the first person created art, they invented the critic. And critics came along and said, like, well, it's easy and it's fun to be a critic, so let's just criticize what everybody does. And I think that's what happened to Jaguar, and it's happening to a lot of designers. You got to be quite strong with your belief system, because otherwise I think people are just going to break you down.
The tricky thing, like the most impressive creators I ever come across have the ability to express the unsaid, whether it's art, music, whether it's comedians. They sort of almost have access to a troubled experience that they can express themselves through art.
Yeah.
But how do you, but then you expose that to the world, and then you have to be commercial.
Yeah. That's the thing is that, yeah, comedian, for instance, can expose themselves in a way. And a designer, you've got to keep that personal experience back, and you have to start fiddling with the client's experience and what they're expecting from their business. Because, people do business with people. No one does business with a logo. Logos don't answer telephones. Logos don't sell cars. Logos don't do anything except create brand awareness. And yeah, it's a strange world. You got to keep what you feel inside personally, and extend a kind of how would I describe it? A force field of not being able to take it personally.
Be your advice to those sort of creative people? They're in that corporate world. They present ideas to people. They get shut down. Like, how do you still have love for what you do and not lose hope?
Yeah, that's the thing. How do you keep the smile on your face when everything seems to be going topsy turvy? The best I could do is say, don't take it personally. It's your job to do things like that, and as a creative person and a creative professional, you have to accept that there's going to be some kind of feedback on what you're going to do, whether it's positive or negative. And if it is negative, you've got to be able to roll with the punches. I think you've got to take it on the chin and be able to work with it. See, creativity is a different kind of spectrum to, say, something like accounting, as an example. An accountant does your books, does everything, and you look at it and you go, well, I guess it's right. I think it's right, unless you yourself are trained as an accountant. I know with my accountant, when they do my tax returns, I go, well, I 2 plus 2 equals 4. And, 30% of your salary is how much you must pay to the IRD. That's what you do. So, yeah, people get questioned more about creativity because, like I said earlier, creativity is something that everybody has in some way or form, but creative professionals have it in bounds, and you just got to hold on to your belief and be able to take it on the chin.
What do you what do you think creativity is, and how does a person's creativity change over time? Like, I've seen with artists, they start using more reds because they can't see in the same way as they get older and stuff like that. What do you think shapes what makes us believe what we do around visual things in the creation of art?
I think the more time we spend on it, the better we get at it. I could do work for clients that takes 5 minutes, but they're not paying me for 5 minutes. They're paying me for the years of experience and I have that allows me to do that job in 5 minutes. It's quite bizarre because I could spend hours staring out the window going, thinking of some kind of solution to a problem that's been posed to me. And sometimes I can spend 5 minutes executing that problem. You find the solution after 5 minutes of thought and processing things. And then you execute it in 5 minutes, and clients think that it's just too. You don't tell them that you did it in 5 minutes. You got to tell, because then they'll freak out and they'll want to pay for 5 minutes. But I think creativity is something you're born with if you're going to become a professional using creativity. Whether you're an architect, graphic designer, artist, even a stand-up comedian, you've got to be able to find yourself a niche, I think, in what you can work in. If you're just going to do logo design, just do logo design. If you're going to do brochures and websites or whatever it is, stick to that niche and try and do as much as you can within that scenario. That will give you the experience you need to push forward and get better.
I think it's like, what was I was saying with Picasso, that story where some comes in to see him, they want him to create this beautiful artwork for them, and they describe what they want. He gets out a napkin, he draws it, and it's this beautiful dove. And they're like, yes, that's exactly it. And then he said something like, oh, that'd be $40,000.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I've heard that story.
Because they pay for the years you put into creating that. Did your offer change? Because I don't like charging per hour. I just think it's a waste of my space. You're disincentivizing me to not be exceptional what I do. You're saying, hey, take longer to do something.
Yeah, that's what I say to clients as well. Say the hourly cost is X, but if you think that's too quick, I can always get one of the juniors or the freelancers to do it, and they can take 10 hours of that time, whereas I could do it for an hour, but you're still going to pay the same fee. That's, like you said, I'm not a big fan of costing by the hour, but sometimes you've got to sit down and say, well, I've got 4 hours to do this in, and I'm going to do it in 2 hours, charge 4 hours for it, so I can at least make a big profit on it, or some profit. And yeah, it's billing by the hour is a bad thing. There's a guy on not LinkedIn, on Facebook and YouTube. He's called The Future.
Yeah.
You must have seen him. He's incredibly well versed at telling people how to bill, how to invoice. And he just says $4,000. Don't even say $3,995. Just bill is $4,000. If you want to work with me, that's the cost. And I think it's easy for him to say that because he has the reputation and the followers and the demand for his work, whereas the rest of us have to be careful how you say things.
Well, it's interesting. I used to go into a stranger's house and sell them a 20 grand thing, and I didn't know them before I door knocked them. And their perception is how much their shock to the price has nothing to do with the product itself. It's their perception of the value that they'll get.
Yeah.
So we used to ask them at the start, how much do you think it is? They'll say, oh, $1,000. Or some will say, oh, at least $30,000.
Yeah.
And depending on what they say would tell me, oh, okay, I did a bad job. You know what I mean? Like, so do you think, how do you actually go through your presentation? Like, is there a dream outcome you're trying to achieve for them and you understand that? Or
yeah, that's the thing. You've got to go through a process, not just in logo design. Let's talk about something a bit bigger, like a rebranding. We did something for PBT, which was a courier company, is a courier company. They've just been bought out by NZ Post. We did a rebranding for them. It took about a month and a half, 2 months of work. And we had to, the dream outcome was to please the board rather than the actual general managers and directors. It was the board that had to be satisfied with what we did. So the dream outcome is really to be able to achieve, I guess, to achieve a financial outcome for the client that they can actually see, well, this is going to make us money, because they're not getting you to design or create a website or create advertising for nothing. They're looking for a return. And, you knock on doors with a $20,000 product. That's very admirable to me, because you can't knock on a door of someone you don't know in advertising or in design and say, well, I want to design you a logo for 20 grand, because the guy will think you're crazy.
Well, it's the question I would ask is, there someone that does that? Maybe not door knocking, but is there what's the most expensive design charge that's out there?
So I know the big agencies cost heaps and heaps and heaps of money. I once saw a design that they charged to a friend of mine's company. He worked for, well, can I mention the name?
I don't know. It's up to you. I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, cool. He worked
Do whatever you want.
He worked for BNZ, and they needed to get a circular logo design done. And he showed it to me, and I thought, well, I would never charge the $5,000 they charged them for that, because it was basically a logo with an emboss effect on it and in a circle. And it's one of those things. I looked at it now and said, well, I could have done that. Why didn't I charge $5,000 for it? Is it just because it's a big ad agency and they can do it in 3 seconds flat? Is that what you're paying for? I assume it is, because I'd like to be in the position where I could just present a logo in 3 minutes flat and say, well, it's $5,000. So yeah, it's a logo, and most design things, they're a low value decision in a
Mm.
way, because people see the creativity as something they can do. I keep mentioning this, and when it comes to creativity, they either don't understand it or they want to mess with it too much, and that's where it becomes like a low value decision instead of a high value decision. If it's a high value decision, people will turn to the designers more and say, we understand what you're trying to achieve, and the goal of our objective is to get something professionally done with as little interference from the client's point of view, to make it worthwhile. I've had briefs where the client once said to me, I can see it in my mind, but I can't picture it. It's enough to tell you what I need you to do. And I was like, if you could see it in your mind, I can't do anything with that. I'm just, it's just impossible to work with something like that. And, you bump into people like that quite a lot.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, the client circles you swim in will determine how much how much value you assign to your product.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this guy. He was like a high ticket salesman, and he said, "Read this magazine." And I was like, okay, why do I read this magazine? Oh, because there's pens in there worth 50 grand.
Yeah.
And it stretches your imagination around price. Because when I think of that story of BNZ, they're just paying for risk. So there's an association with this brand, some level of relationship, and the person that has that job wants to stick to the status quo, and they don't want to take the risk, so they're paying that 5 grand for risk. And if you didn't charge enough, there would have been association to low quality. It was quite interesting. So
Yeah.
when you go to a
Sure.
different level of client, you're just like, oh, there's people making this kind of money. This is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on with a company called TR Group for about 9-10 years now. And I look at the work that I've done for them versus the work that I would do for another company. And there's not much I could actually add into my portfolio, because so much of it is branding work to make sure there's consistency across everything that they do. So even though they've been a huge client of mine, it's difficult for me to be able to say to other clients, potential clients, that I've done all this fantastic work, because I actually haven't. It's like doing a form for how to sell a truck, doing a form how to lease a truck, doing a form to do with like what happens when the truck comes back from lease or comes back to the rental department. And these things matter. They really do. But in terms of me showing it to another client, yeah, I can't. And yeah, you're right. I think they want to spend money. The bigger companies like BNZ, they want to spend money because they think um it takes the risk out of it. It's like if they spend so much money on a painting, as an example, $100,000 or something for a painting to go into their foyer, then they're probably assuming that is actually worthwhile, rather than $5,000 for the painting. Would they pay the same? Would they want the same painting if it was worth $5,000 that they would if it was worth 100 grand?
Yeah, they're buying status. They did studies with wine, like same wine, different prices. The one that was most expensive, they thought tastes better.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, just on the creative side, what type of offering and price would you need to charge to feel proud of what you do? And who would you need to say no to enable you to create the work you love?
I've said no to a couple of people before. I've always tried to position myself in a niche market where I've said I'll go after businesses that no one else really wants to go after, that doesn't see the benefit of working with them. I think we briefly spoke about this, and I said, there's a scenario where creative people want to work with brands like Mini and Red Bull and all that kind of stuff because they see there's a creative avenue out there. But in reality, those brands are quite restricted. Whereas if you had to go into another medium that's perhaps a niche market, like I said, with TR Group, they're a truck and trailer rental and lease company. People didn't see the benefit of working with them. I don't think until it kind of got polished up as like the ugly duckling, you know. They really were at the start quite the little duckling, and they ended up as a swan, I think.
So what because you said it's hard to share your work with clients. Is that because you're not creating the work that you want to create, or what would lead to you being like, okay, this is good, or is that just the challenge of being a creative?
I think that's a challenge of being a creative. You know, the most important thing for a creative is a portfolio of work. It's kind of like a resume, and it shows what your skills and capabilities are. And if you're lacking in that portfolio department, people don't understand how much work you've actually done besides that. There's so much work that goes into presenting a portfolio, because there's maybe 20 items in that are worthwhile, and the rest are just, you can't sell it to a client. You can't say, I'm worth charging $20,000 or whatever it is because of this one logo I've done, and it looks pretty awful because that's what the client requested. You've got to you've got to look at that portfolio all the time and say that I need to add stuff into it. And a lot of the work I do, sometimes you just can't add that portfolio quality work into it.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing about prices, because that's common when people start as a challenge. For me, as a challenge was like feeling deserving of what I charge. And funnily enough, someone pitched it to me. It's like, you're doing a disservice by not charging enough. Like, you think about, if you charge 20 grand, how much would they value it? And then if you charge 20 grand, would you need to say yes to all those clients where you said you did bad work with or work you're not proud of? You imagine if you only had to do the work that you believed in and you didn't compromise on it, apart from being, some level of humility.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a psychopath, but
No, not really. Yeah, the thing is, if you turn work away, then you've got to have enough work to sustain the company's growth and continued viability. Sometimes it's easier to say no, and sometimes it's harder to say yes, because you compromise your integrity in a way as a creative person. And like you said earlier about the wine analogy that you brought up and the watch analogy, I have a watch. Here it is here. And I don't need to have a watch on my wrist, but people buy expensive watches, and there's no real benefit from it, because I can buy $100 watch and it's accurate, it's G-Shock, it goes underwater, it does all the stuff I need it to do as a watch. So why would I need a $50,000 breaklet? I'm not going to get more time out of it. I'm not going to get more benefits out of it. All I'm going to get the benefits is from, hey, do you want to see my watch? And, you see a lot of people that pose for photos, and they've always got their hand up so you can see the watch that they've got. And it just boggles my brain, that scenario. It's the same with the pen. I make a mark with the pen. You make a mark with the pen. What difference does a $50,000 pen make to the mark? It doesn't mean you can charge more because you've got a $50,000 pen, does it? And it's just interesting that people find high value decisions in things that are actually low value decisions. Yeah, like the pen and the watch and a logo design. Logo design is actually, like I said before, a low value decision, but some people think it's a high value decision. You can't go in there and charge them 20,000 Rand, $20,000 for something that's perceived as low value, or something that's perceived as high value, which you might not be charging enough for. It's difficult to find that happy medium between what can be charged and what can't be.
It's interesting that you label logos as low value. It's like people have conditioned you to feel that way.
Yeah, in a way they have. There's a lot of work out there that does condition you to think that a scenario is playing out where you have been conditioned to think it's a low value item because you can generate so many of them. You don't even have to try very hard. You can go to websites like Fiverr.com and Canva and places like that and get a logo generated in a matter of minutes. So why would you want to spend $5,000 on a logo, or 10,000 or 15,000, whatever the sum is, when you could get it done yourself? It depends on the client you're working with and the brand that they represent, the company they represent, and the knowledge of the people there. That it's I've designed logos where I've charged a minimal amount for it, but because the logo exists now and it has to go into everything else, you kind of are benefiting from the creation of the logo as a baby that is now going to grow to be a number of different things and different items. And that's quite nice to do. But you're right, the logo is a small value item to me as well, because I don't really see it. You get conditioned. I have been conditioned. Well, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, well, it makes it hard to sell something if you don't think it's worth something. You know what I mean?
No, I understand. It's a bizarre trait of designers. I think we get into a process of stagnation for some of the stuff that you do. If you're always doing websites that look the same, that feel the same, that you use the same kind of techniques on, you're going to get complacent about what you do. I worked with at a company, and the first thing they did, if a logo design came in that says we start at $10,000, and this was 15, 16 years ago, and that was just the beginning of it. We started at 10 and we probably finished at 20 or 30 or $40,000, depending on what happened. And that was in a time, I think, when design was more pure than it is now. I think design at this time, like I said, you can get anybody to do it. You can get 100 people on Fiverr.com to make a logo, or to bid on a logo, or it just seems it's become low value when it should be high value.
Well, essentially, I like these two questions in business. Is like, what would your service look like if you charged $100,000 for it? And if there was the only way to grow your business was the next client you support will refer you business, how would you treat them? So what would your $100,000 product look like if you were to stretch it? Like what would you need to do to feel like it's worth $100,000?
I think I'd have to feel about it personally, that it's worth $100,000. I mean, you've put quite a big conundrum in front of me here about like the value of the work I do. And I just feel that there's a scenario where, yes, you could do $100,000 for a job, and will people in the future believe that you actually charged $100,000 for this?
Well, what would you need to add to it? So it doesn't have to be a logo. So what would you need to add? Would it be a logo? Would it be all the clarity that pulls in? Would it be an oversight in terms of the creative direction of their marketing campaign? Would it be every day you're showing up at their office?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that you've got to do. I honestly don't think that you could charge $100,000 for a logo design in this world. It's $100,000 for a complete rebrand, where you're looking at creating something that rolls across a number of items. If I can go back to that TR Group example that I spoke to you about earlier, is that the the logo itself was relatively cheap to fix up and do, but it was the rolling out of all the other items that added value to what they did and added money into my pocket. So yeah, I would say that it's not just about excuse me. It's not just about charging 100 grand for something and having to embellish it with stuff. It's about charging 100 grand and saying that the future of this project will create more revenue over time than it would just as a one-off. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, anytime you're selling B2B, it's money. There's no other, like, even if you're saving them time, legal, HR, it's all just making more money. And like, if I was tasked with like, okay, I've got to do 100 grand service, I would partner with the people that deliver the outcome of the revenue and create like a board of directors of sort. So like, I'd be the project manager of all the people, so we're all consistent. Someone's just calling me on Discord. Never had that happen.
Right.
Don't know how to turn it off. There we go. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna have to learn how to go on Do Not Disturb. But basically, I would think, okay, the dream outcome is they're doing a rebrand and they're trying to increase their revenue by $5 million this year. I would partner with, let's say, maybe it's an e-commerce side of things. And I would partner with someone that's conversion rate optimization. I'd partner with the Facebook advertising. I'd partner with the creative person. And I'd try to pull them all together to have a unified version that's associated with the logo or with the brand and what they stand for. And I'd be the middleman to communicate what the client wants and then what actually is required to achieve the result.
Yeah, I've done that as well. That's, on the bigger jobs on that spend time or take up time, I don't have all the abilities and skills to do things. So you project manage it, and you're correct. You've got to bring all those different people in. That's quite relevant to being a designer, because you get the design you created. It's kind of like your baby. And if you're creating an e-commerce site as an example, and the client's updating it and they're not doing such a great job on it, it's kind of like your baby. They're not looking after it. And it's better that you project manage these things for your clients and bring together the right people for it. The problem is that sometimes the relationship between the client and the supplier, becomes a bit too strong, and they start taking work away from you. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, for sure.
It's strange, really, but it's a great way to work, is to bring all those people together, because you can't do everything yourself. You have to get a specialist in and get them to do it. Project management is one of the forefronts of what I do, because I've only got a small business, so I have to be able to get a printer and a signage company, and you're creating relationships with all these different suppliers. That's important.
Well, fundamentally, you're never selling what you sell. You're helping them achieve what they want. You're achieving a dream outcome. But I mean, in terms of like when you partner with people and they sell your clients, I always look at it kind of like the analogy of the husband and the wife. It's like, there's always going to be a guy trying to steal your girl.
Yeah.
And you could either fight every guy that tries to try keep them away from it, or you could focus on being an exceptional husband so that she doesn't even look.
Yeah.
Or maybe she looks, but she stays.
Yes.
Comes home.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
So that's interesting, because logo, I mean, I don't think the most important thing for every business right now is brand. Like fundamentally, everything can be obsolete with AI at some point. And then you even think like if you're selling a product, so you got Amazon, you got Google, it could get to a point where someone just asks for a product. Hey, I need to buy this certain thing. And then it will automatically search on Amazon, so you don't even have a chance to advertise what you have. But if they say, can I have the Nike shoes, because you got a brand that they've associated, and just like the watch analogy, they want to signal a certain level of status from buying it, or some sort of values that associate with that brand. It's the only real protection that you have. What do you think about in terms of like what a logo is? Like, do you think about how people feel when they look at it? Do you think about the way it's structured and the shapes? How do you? Yeah, I don't get it.
I also don't get it sometimes because, like I said, I recently did a logo design and it was interesting feedback that I got from the client, which I felt was perhaps very valid, because I knew what they were. Once they saw the first project, they decided that, well, the first presentation, they decided, well, the benefits and negatives to this design that he's presented, and we need to make changes. And then you get into a position where you've got to be the right person for the job.
So how do you become creative? Like, how do you set yourself up? Like, I like the book, The War of Art.
Yeah.
And it's like someone asked this famous artist, like, how do you create, get creative? He's like, well, creativity strikes. I only write when creativity strikes, but fortunately it strikes every day at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do you get in the frame of mind, and how do you find that answer to what's needed?
Well, a lot of it comes from being able to talk to the people that you work with, to be able to bounce ideas off people. That's quite important. So sometimes it is difficult to become creative. It's just you're doing a job that sometimes there is no creativity involved in what you're doing. You're just like they call a Mac operator. You're just there to make the thing look functional rather than creative. And I think getting creative is something driven by youth as well. When you're young, you have this passion for things, and as you get older, you maybe get a bit more skeptical about what you do. And I think getting into the moment of being creative is something as a professional that you have to do. I think creativity is a great job to be in, because a lot of the times it's not the same. A lot of the times it's different, so it gives you different opportunities to do stuff. Where I think an accountant doing tax returns always has to do the same kind of scenario, go through the numbers, go through this, and they can't just come up and say, oh, being creative and we're going to screw the ID out of $20,000. They've got to be specific about what they do, whereas creative people can be creative in a number of different ways. And if it takes a cup of coffee to make you creative in the morning, then that's cool. If it takes a Red Bull or 3, then that's even better. But creativity is just, you can't turn it on, I don't think. I've been creative on the toilet. To be honest, you sit there, sometimes it's the best place to think. And other times I think you get to a point where creativity is something you just enjoy and you want to do it. And you kind of get addicted to making stuff that's different, stuff that makes a change, makes a difference for your clients, makes a difference for people. The way people interact with the brand is also important. Like you said, with the Nike stuff, how many times do you have to see a Nike logo before you realize that you're in love with the brand? And if Nike stopped advertising, would anything actually happen to their brand? If they stopped creating new shoes, I suppose things would be bad. But bringing it closer to home, if Harvey Norman stopped creating advertising that's just the same stuff over and over again, would they fall to pieces?
Yes, 100%. They don't have a brand, in my opinion.
They don't have a brand there. It's just some guy screaming at you saying, we've got TVs, come on down. And it's old thinking. If you can find new ways to approach stuff, um, it's worthwhile considering what people want these days. Because I think in the last century, 1900s, 1980s, 90s, that kind of timeline, with the birth of the internet, people were looking for what they needed. I need a television. I need something now. Now, in this time of the year, or in this generation we live in, people are just saying, I want, give me stuff that I want. I don't need it anymore. I don't need 10 pairs of shoes. I just want 10 pairs of shoes. I don't need a 90-inch TV. I want a 90-inch TV. Do you need an iPhone 16? No, I want one. Give it to me. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. And that creates some kind of example where design work and brand work can become very powerful. And I think as a creative person, you have to understand that you're responsible for making not just your clients' money, but for making people happy with what they're associating with, what logo they see, what design they see.
What would be your advice? Like, someone that's done it a while and they're sort of disenchanted about the creative work um, they sort of lost the zest a little bit.
I'd say don't give up. It'll always change. You always get different jobs. You always get different opportunity. Don't give up. It's much better to be in something you want to be in than something you're forced to be in. If you can come to work every day with that excitement on your face saying, I want to be here, rather than I don't want to be here, and I'm only doing this to churn over the numbers. I really want to play keyboards or the guitar, something like that in a band. And then, creativity is something you shouldn't give up on, in my opinion. I think I could draw a better stick man than you, but I want to be able to, I want to be able to do that every day. If that's what creativity is all about, if that's what my creativity's outlet is, that's what I want to do. Mentioned it before, everybody's creative in some way, but creative professionals shouldn't give up. Doesn't matter how many times you push down, you should stay focused on that creativity scenario, because you're very much blessed in what you do and your talents. My dad, as an example, retired when he was 60 years old, and he hasn't worked for 30 years. It's almost 90 now. And he says, I could have done a lot of other things that I wanted to do, but what you do, I'll never be able to do. I never could have done, because I just don't have the ability, the creative outlet to do it. And, he retired a wealthy man. And, his just advice to me was to stick to it. Do your creative work, do it well, and make sure that you don't fall off the wagon and just give up because some guy said, I don't like it. That's an important scenario, is to be able to enjoy what you do every day, not just some days. So don't give up.
Well said. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Okay, great.